What up? What up? What's really good, y'all? It's your boy Aaron Bevins, the Millennial Entrepreneur. And on today's episode, we have a special guest who's going to be dropping some nuggets. We have Annalise Maddox in the building. What's up, Annalise?
What's up? How are you?
Amazing, amazing. Annalise, where are you tuning out of today?
San Antonio, or like San Antonio, Texas.
Yeah,
and or my upstairs.
Yeah. San Antonio, Texas, upstairs, to be exact. And I'm really excited to have Annalise on today's show because we're going to be talking about an aspect of real estate wholesaling or doing real estate professionally that oftentimes you don't hear on a lot of shows, and that is how to structure the paperwork and have a streamlined process for your transaction coordination and the correlation between this and generating six figures and beyond in your business. Because I promise you, those that aren't talking about this, many of them just don't know, or they don't realize how bad off they are if they don't have processes for their paperwork. So right after this intro, we're going to get into it. I'm really excited to drop these nuggets for y'all. We'll see y'all right after the intro.
We made it, that's facts, ayy. We the greatest, that's facts, ayy. Prices raising, that's facts, ayy. That's right. But we paid it, that's facts, ayy. I did. We hate it, that's facts, ayy. Cause we changing, that's facts, ayy. We did. Can't blame them, that's facts, ayy. Cause we made it, that's facts, ayy. Cherry on top, that's a goat, yeah. Where you been, I wanna know, yeah. Greatest story ever told, yeah. Greatest story ever told, yeah. I know you wanna look up for this. Baby, let me turn you up a bit. You said you made it through hell and back. Give me the school, baby, tell the facts. Don't be shy.
I love it. I love it. So, Annalise, give us a little insights for those that don't know you. How'd you step into the world of real estate and into this niche now of professional transaction coordination? What did your journey look like?
So starting out, I started out doing wholesaling, obviously with you back in 2018. And so from the beginning kind of that, I feel like I naturally kind of fell into the transaction coordinating role just because you were more running the sales team and all of that. So it kind of became my job to just stay on top of all the paperwork and everything. And in doing that, ended up building a bunch of relationships with title companies and people that kind of opened my eyes to how much really goes on in the background. And so that became really interesting to me. And so kind of was my goal to figure out as much as I could, because what I realized was on the deals that we paid close attention to the back end work, the paperwork, the transaction coordination, all of that, we had so much more control of how that deal went, whether it got to closing or not. We put ourselves in a position to have so much more just overall power of that whole deal. So that kind of became a main focus, and realized like if you can actually know what's going on with your deals, know what's going on in the back end, know what's happening with the title, because a lot of times that you don't know, you just send it to the title company and hope it's clear. But if you are involved through the process, you have more control over getting that deal to closing, which I think has a lot to do with obviously your bottom line if you're getting, more deals to closing. So that's kind of where my interest was piqued into going more into this direction.
Yeah, and it's such a good something. It's something that it's so insightful, and it's something you learn along the way, right? That you don't think about in the beginning that, okay, if I get to the volume that I want to be at, 3, 4, 5 plus contracts coming in, multiple deals closing at one time, we don't think about all of the moving parts that happen on in the background, the communication that has to happen for each one of the transactions to actually get a deal facilitated. Did you have a rude awakening, a deal or a deal that kind of opened your eyes to the need to have a good transaction coordination process in wholesaling?
I don't know if it was one in particular, but I think there were a few. Like, I don't know if you remember one. There was one that we had where we had gotten the contract with the seller. He didn't live in town. He lived like in Austin, I think. So like an hour or so away. And it took like 3 months to close because it was just the process for one, getting title cleared because it was an inherited property, getting him to stay in there. And he had other offers. he took our offer because we were like, hey, we can close quickly as long as title's clear. And of course, you know, it wasn't. So that it took forever. But I think what made me realize is building that relationship with him and communicating with him regularly, keeping him updated about what was happening, compared to other times we had that happen where we hadn't done that, where the people are like, well, you know, you said you could close in 30 days and the 30 days is up. I'm going to go with someone else. Not realizing they're going to have to start the process all over again, do all of that again. It's going to take just as long. So that's kind of one of the things I realized, because with him, there were so many issues.
Yeah.
And then even down to after closing, right before closing, on the day of closing, the buyers closed first. And for some reason, the title company gave them the keys. And so he goes by the house one last time on his way to the title company to close, to like take one last look at it, make sure there's nothing there he wants. And he runs into these people who were the buyers, who were like, oh, we just bought this property. And he's like, I have no idea.
Oh, I remember this. I remember this.
Yeah, it was such an issue. But and he was still frustrated with us at that point too, because he felt like he was, you know, didn't know what's going on. But if there hadn't been that relationship there throughout those months of getting title cleared, there's no way he would have backed out 100%.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of one of the ones that really I feel like stands out.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And we've talked about this, how who you have in the transaction coordination seat makes such a big difference in whether or not you're going to get some of these deals through to title. Why is that, Annalise? Right? Like what are you looking for? You know, if I'm a new wholesaler, like talk to me like I'm in the third grade.
Right.
Like what am I looking for in a good, strong transaction coordinator?
I would say, so really the main thing is obviously attention to detail and being able to kind of stay on task with all of the different moving parts, especially when you have multiple deals going on that could all have completely different issues, or even multiple title companies. There's an organizational side of it. You have got to stay on top of exactly where you're at with each one, because you think you'll remember and you don't. And I learned that the hard way, because as you remember, I never used to write anything down. I was just like, I remember everything. But after a while, when things start building up, that's not the case. So there's that aspect of it, but also I think there's a lot of personality comes into it when you need to be able to communicate clearly with people, and you also need to be able to anticipate their expectations and everything like that. Like you can tell by someone's personality, like this is someone who's going to require a lot more communication. This is someone we have to be very transparent with, because if they see any inkling of something that looks shady or questionable, they're going to pull the plug. So there's a lot of you have to read the people very well, and then also be able to communicate with them, get things that you need from them, but also still be strong enough in your stance to kind of control the situation as well too. Because you also have to you need to put your foot down in some areas and demand certain things in a nice way without them feeling like you're pushing them around, but also get what you need from the deal, you know, and from them to get things closed.
Yeah, and what I find is that it's so hard to find that exact balance, right? Because you need that person who's very detail oriented, and to have a measure of like task orientation as well, because there's oftentimes so many things that need to get done, conversation that need to be had. And so to find somebody who has those traits and is also like amiable with people and is friendly, and and knows how to read the room and knows how to cater to people's personalities and dynamic in that way, it's kind of hard to find those types of people. And so in your opinion, are there certain characteristics that successful escrow officers, transaction coordinators have, in addition to what you had mentioned? Like knowing how to read the room, being very organized. Are there any other like attributes or qualities that make for a really good transaction coordinator?
Yeah, I mean, really, really, so much of it, I think, is just being able to communicate effectively and being able to build that trust with people. Like you want them to feel like they trust you, because you're asking for a lot of people, and you're also working with things. You have to think about it. Like there's times when I've had to have sellers. I mean, I've had to have them sign over a power of attorney to me. I mean, they're literally allowing me to then go sign something off in their name, and there has to be that level of trust. And if they feel like, you're just this random person sending them emails, they need to know that you have a level of authority in the situation but also trustworthiness, and that you are working for their best interest too. So I think it's a matter of, building trust with people, but also being able to kind of steer and control the situation too.
How important is it for your transaction coordinator to be trained in things like what's a title commitment, what's a Schedule A, what's a Schedule B, what's a Schedule C, what is an affidavit of heirship? What do I do in the case of this, this situation, you know what I mean, with, real estate, some scenario, like what is it important that your transaction coordination, and I feel like you're so qualified to answer this question because I feel like you've been a transaction coordinator in both seasons. Like you've been a transaction coordinator when we had no idea what a Schedule A was.
Exactly.
But you're also a transaction coordinator now after so many deals under your belt. So how important is it to be very knowledgeable as a transaction coordinator?
Yeah, I mean, I think like there's always going to be stuff that you don't know. If you're not an escrow agent, you're not there at the title company, there's always certain measure of things that you're going to have to ask for help with or direction on. But I think having a good general understanding of what each item is, how things connect, what the laws are in your state, all of that I think is so important because there's so much that the title company is doing that really when it comes to getting your deals closed, when you're doing multiple deals per month, I mean, if you've got an escrow agent who's working on them, it can go very slowly because they have a lot of stuff going on. So if in my situation, when it comes up that there's an affidavit of heirship that needs to be done, I'm not just waiting for the title company to get around to doing it. Like I know who's required. I know the rules of who's allowed to sign off on an affidavit, who can be an affiant, who can't be. So, and obviously there's caveats you've got to figure out at times, but those are areas where I think it's important that you learn those. Because if you can go in and you can step in and do that portion instead of waiting around for the title company to have time, because they could call the seller, leave a voicemail, and move on with their day until they hear back, or move on with their week until they hear back. Whereas if you do it, it's like I'm gonna text the seller, I'm gonna call them 3 times, I'm gonna get a hold of them, and we're gonna start working on this now because I don't want this delaying closing. Because it's like obviously everybody knows the longer something takes, your chances of closing go down. And so I think having a good understanding of all of these different things and how they work together and what the, kind of what the end result, the goal is important. And, obviously you learn that over time, but having the best understanding that you can of it is really important.
Yeah.
And real quick, Aaron, before you get going, like I'm really, really frozen on my end. Am I like super frozen on your end or is everything smooth?
It's a little choppy.
Okay.
But I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, cool. Because I keep checking and I'm like frozen in like the worst ways, but it's all fine.
No, I mean I can still hear you 100%. So
okay.
And it'll probably go away once we bring our slides on stage on the screen. But okay. So let me ask you this: are there any like what should new wholesalers keep in mind? What would you share with them in terms of title companies, in terms of what to expect and how to navigate whenever it comes to working with an escrow officer, working with your title company and clearing title for your real estate deal? For those who maybe have only done a deal or two and they had somebody walk them through it, so they didn't do any of the transaction coordination, and so they're going to be like, deers in headlights whenever they have to do it for themselves and or train somebody else to do it. What expectations would you set for that person?
I think the main thing to keep in mind is that when you're working with a title company, like there's definitely a give and take there. Like you don't want to go in and be like a huge burden on the title company. Like, yes, they're making money from these deals closings and this is what they want. This is their business, but you don't want to be a burden on their business. And you don't want to seem like you're like draining to their time and all of that. So I think being upfront with them and letting them know that you're new to this, but that you're trying to learn it so that you can be more useful. Like set aside time to say, when do you have time to go over the Schedule C? When can we go over the commitment? Because I want to see what's needed and see if there's anything I can do to help you with it, to get this done quicker, smoother, whatever. Be upfront about the fact that maybe you are new, but also let them know that your goal is to learn and to be more helpful to them so that you can kind of take some stuff off their plate and make it easier. Because the goal is to build those connections so that you're doing multiple deals with the same title company, with the same escrow agent, so that they know that, so they'll prioritize your deals if they know that you're going to be making an effort to help them through the process and not just become, a time burden on them.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And are there any hacks that you would give to newer wholesalers on well, here's an even better question. Do you find that after a certain amount of deals, a high volume wholesaling or investing operation should use multiple escrow officers? Or do you think you should allow your escrow officer and the title team that you use to expand to be able to facilitate your growth? Do you have an opinion on that, or what's your thoughts for those that are kind of approaching that level in business?
I think it depends on, I think it's until it seems like they don't have time. Like I would say I would use the same title company, the same escrow, as long as if they're doing things the way that needs to be done, and you know that they are okay with doing the assignment fees, doing double closings, doing everything that you need. If they match the requirements that you have for your business and they can keep up with it and they're not creating an issue like taking too long, things like that, then I don't have any problem sticking with one, especially if you're in the same area. Eventually though, if you do start feeling like they're kind of getting behind on deals, their things are not happening as quickly, then that's when I would look into either one, see if they recommend, if there's another agent. They probably aren't going to want to recommend another agent within their company because that's taking away from their deals. So you may want to try a different company or not. But I mean, I don't see anything wrong with sticking with one if they're getting things done on time.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And so if you've heard my content before, y'all, you know that we speak about the 4 components of building out a wholesale operation that you can scale to 6 figures and beyond. And so those 4 components are lead generation. Number 2 is conversion, because we have to have a predictable process for converting those leads to contracts. And then we have fulfillment. And that means that now we have to fulfill on all the promises that we've made up until now. And fulfillment is made up of 2 subcomponents. And that's number 1, transaction coordination. And the second one is disposition. So transaction coordination is core to our being able to streamline our wholesale business. And so, Annalise, you have a few nuggets that you want to drop with some slides we can bring on the screen. Do you want me to go ahead and bring that on the stage right now?
Yeah, you can.
All right, boom.
Okay. So can you see that in there? Okay.
Yes,
cool.
perfect.
So this is kind of a basic step-by-step, especially if you're new, that you can kind of take into consideration when setting up your process of how you're going to handle your transaction coordination. Obviously, every deal has different nuances and situations that are going to require a few different steps or possibly a different order. But this is kind of like a basic guideline that you can kind of keep in mind with your process. So we've got, let me see. The changing. My computer's going so slow. So with first steps, one of the main things I think when working, especially this is if you're working with a partner or a team, and obviously if you're a one-person operation, this may or may not necessarily apply to you, but it's good to keep in mind because the goal obviously is to expand. The goal is to hire somebody if you haven't already. And so when starting out, there's certain expectations you really want to have in order because if I say, oh, I'm doing transaction coordination, and it's like, and then my partner is like, cool, I'm doing sales. And you guys never talk about what that actually entails. Yeah. You could both be assuming that certain things are being done by the other person because you haven't clarified that yet.
True.
So there's a lot to decide. And there's no one way to do it. This is up to each, people figure out what makes sense for them. But you've got, of course, your initial creating contacts and contracts. So some people choose to have it where the transaction coordination sends out the original contract to the sellers. Personally, I think it makes sense for the acquisitions to do that because it's happening right there in the moment and you don't have to worry about anything getting lost in translation. But again, that's depends on your setup. So reviewing contracts and setting expectations with your sellers, that's going to be basically once it all comes in, you want to review, make sure everything is good, and then setting the expectations with your seller. Is that going to be something where the acquisitions person lets them know the timeline to expect and what kind of like title process we're looking into? Or is it that you as a transaction coordinator or whoever you're having do that is going to call and talk to the seller and let them know what kind of timeline we're looking at, what's going to be needed, everything that kind of goes into it. So who is actually going to start an open title? Who is in charge of sending earnest money and option money is really important because there's timelines on this. So if whoever's doing title or transaction coordination is in charge of that, then that needs to be something that's, you know, very openly communicated between the acquisitions and then the transaction. Because if acquisitions gets a contract on Friday and doesn't let the transaction coordinator know, by Monday, you could almost possibly be late by even getting that earnest money in. So these are kind of things that need to be very clear as to who's doing what in these certain situations.
Yeah. I don't know how many times I've annoyed transaction coordinators because of EMD. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it'd be the small little $10 ones too.
Oh yeah. And that's the thing, it doesn't even matter how much it is. It's just a matter of, again, when you've got one of those sellers who is calling immediately, they're calling the same day the title company to find out if they've received the contract, if the earnest money has been dropped off. If you never know who's going to be that type, so you need to have that expectation set clear to know who's in charge of what. Mm-hmm. And then same thing, communicating with the seller throughout the process. If you've got, you know, like let's say you do need an affidavit of heirship signed. Is that something, are you relying on the relationship that was built between acquisitions and the seller? Or is the transaction coordinator, have they already built that relationship themselves? I personally recommend that you do that. If there's someone in charge of transaction, go ahead and bypass the middleman. Go ahead and build that relationship with the seller right away. Establish yourself as the one who's going to be communicating with them. There's probably times when acquisitions will still have to communicate and maybe go get things signed, but at least so that you can call and talk to them about it, and you don't have to worry about being like this new person who's asking for the last four of their social and throwing them off, you know? Yeah. Let's see. And then this one is really important because it kind of is easy to be missed, is terminating contracts. If you have to terminate a contract based off of the end of your option period, there needs to be a set process in place for who's doing that. And that person needs to either have the authority to make the decision, or you guys need to have a process of when is that being discussed so that the person can pull the trigger. Because if you miss your deadline on that, you're out your earnest money. So that's obviously something you got to have clarified.
And so can I just speak on something really quick while you're moving to the next slide? Can you go back to the last slide though, really quick?
Yeah.
Guys, so I love how organized this is, by the way, Annalise, because it's really cool to see a checklist. Those of you who are smart, who are watching this on the live and or on the replay, please show Annalise some love. Throw some fire emojis, throw some hundreds in there, because she just created for you a mini checklist of what needs to happen whenever, in order to open escrow and to begin working through a deal. And it seems very basic, but whenever you get to the point where you're opening up multiple deals, multiple files on multiple deals, and you have multiple parties to talk to, and multiple EMDs and multiple title commitments to look through, it can get out of hand really, really quickly. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, having something organized in a checklist way like this is like a mini SOP for you guys. So shout out to you, Annalise, for breaking this down for everybody.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a trial and error, but at least having most scenarios laid out in advance is really helpful.
Yep. 100%.
So this next one, this is kind of this is like a really generalized step-by-step. There's of course a lot more that goes into each step, but there's a lot just to kind of keep and consider the timeline of your steps. So of course, you know, the first thing, and this is when you're starting out with your original contract, first thing you kind of want to do is you want to start out with, you know, of course, review your original signed contract, make sure everything looks good. You've got it completely filled out. You don't want to be sending incomplete documents to the title company, because again, that's wasting their time. So then you want to go to, when you submit your deal to the title company, just make sure you CC all necessary parties. And then one of the things is kind of keep in mind, include any details that could be helpful. Like if you know for a fact that the name on the contract is Stephanie Gonzalez, but you know that it's Stephanie is the one signing. She's the closest thing we have to the owner, but the truth is we know it's going to be under her mom, you know, Belinda, Bethany, whatever. Go ahead and let the title company know that, because what's going to happen is they're going to pull that title commitment and it's going to automatically look like a red flag to them. It is something that still either way has to be dealt with, but at least if they know what it is, it doesn't immediately show up to them as like, oh gosh, like what even is this? This isn't even the seller, you know. It lets them kind of know these things that are going on.
That's right.
And then same thing is, you know, let them know who's included. If this is a JV agreement that you're doing, let them know like, hey, I've included my partner on this. They're going to be involved, you know, attach documents. Like if you have a JV agreement, go ahead and put that in there so they know. There's just, you know, anything that could kind of save them time so they're not searching to figure out what are these loose ends on here. This one, so when sending earnest money or option money, that's going to be something, of course, that whoever's in charge of that, that's going to be a step that has to be done. You want to make sure that that's done in the timely manner when it needs to be done, so you don't lose your deals over it. And then the other thing to really keep in mind, this kind of goes along with the termination, is make sure that you have calendar reminders set for your option period end dates. Because if you've got a deal going and you've got a 10-day option period and you have no bites on it, your earnest money, of course, is at stake. So you want to be sure that you have a reminder so you don't miss that moment of when you need to either submit an extension or even a termination to make sure you don't lose your money. And then, sorry, my thing keeps freezing.
It's good. It's good.
Okay, good. And then, yeah, and be prepared. Like, be prepared. Have that expectation set that whoever is in charge of making the decision, you guys are prepared to send out that termination, because you need to inform the seller as well as the title company or whoever, you know, if you're in an attorney state, make sure you're prepared and you're ready to send that out within the deadline that needs to happen. Because like here, like in Texas with our area, you have to send it usually by 5 p.m. on the business day, on whatever day it is. So you don't have till midnight here. You have till 5 p.m. So you've got that. And then next step is you want to make sure you obtain and save any receipted copies of your contract with your deposits. You don't want to wait too long for that, because you want to make sure you get the receipted copy. So you want to see that they've actually received it, because that shows your actual timeline of when everything was accepted and started. And then when you do that, you're going to request with your title company, request the expected commitment date, because everyone's a little bit different, but that way you know, okay, if we started it today, when can I expect the commitment to be back? So that way you know when your follow-up date is. So if they tell you should be back on Wednesday, well, then you know you can follow up either, you know, Wednesday afternoon, and be prepared to start your process of trying to make sure the commitment's clear. Your next one, just review the commitment. So this is what I recommend. You don't always have to do this. I recommend this, especially if you're trying to learn more about the process and what goes into it. Set a time and see if you can ask them, like, when do you have time to review the commitment with me? Because I want to like see what's going on with it. Because this is one of the ways you're going to learn a lot more. And don't just call them out of nowhere and be like, hey, what is this? Because they got to pull the file, do all this. Let them know, like, okay, if the commitment's back, you know, can I call you tomorrow at 1:30? So do you have 20 minutes so we can go over it? And go ahead and set that expectation that you want to go over it and see what it is. So that way they can actually show you, okay, you know, it says on here that there was a divorce decree and we don't know who the house was given to. And they'll kind of show you the way it looks on the commitment of what the issues that came up. And then that way you can see, okay, now when this comes up on here, what are our next steps? And it's just seeing these things and these different opportunities is what's going to kind of give you the chance to learn more and actually expand your understanding of what's happening and what to look for. And then it gives you the opportunity to kind of offer assistance on your end too.
That is such a nugget. That is such a nugget. Y'all, if that is value, show Annalise some love in the comment section, because I feel like this is so powerful for the team that's working the contract to ask the escrow officer to review the title commitment with them so that they can see anything that may be an encumbrance on title, so that you can, are you saying, Annalise, that a good transaction coordinator is somebody who views the title clearing process as a team effort between the title company and the wholesaling team?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of times if you don't ask for the commitment, they may not send it to you. Because in a lot of cases, like I know there's a bunch of realtors who really understand this back end process, and they'll ask for it so that they can go ahead and start talking to their sellers, figuring stuff out. But there's a bunch of them that have no idea about this. So they don't always just offer this up. I mean, they'll usually send it to you at some point, but most of the time they're not sending this out because most people don't really know to ask for it or care to. But if you ask them to send you a copy of it when they get it, you can kind of go ahead and get to the point where you can go ahead and look at it. Like if I look at one now and I see that it says that, my seller, John, and it shows like, okay, there's an abstract judgment against someone with the same name for, an unpaid child support lien. Well, right away, I know that one of the steps that has to happen is now I need to get with this guy, John, and I need to find out, what are the last, did you ever live at this address that's associated with this lien? What is your date of birth? Because it'll have some of that information. You just have to see, like, is this the same person? But it's little things like that you can do. You can even let the title company know. You can be like, hey, I went ahead and talked to John. I checked his date of birth, this and that. Here's the information. And then give them the opportunity to come back and say, okay, yes, this is him. This is something he's going to owe, or no, this isn't even him. We can clear this from our issues. And they can do it without you, but if you can do these little things, like, why not go ahead and do that to help them clear things up quicker? So, and just understanding that side of things. So it helps a lot to have those conversations with them when you can, because it gives you the opportunity to kind of start to understand more what's going on in the background.
Yeah. I love it. Big nuggets. And then that last part, continue on a 24 to 48 hour follow-up until title has been cleared. Such a simple but profound thing, because I think you had talked about this whenever you spoke to the community, Annalise, about how it being a pet peeve for some title companies when the wholesaler or whoever opens escrow and they find a buyer and or they work the deal on the back end, and then a day away from closing, they're like, hey, are we closing tomorrow? And it's like, what? We haven't heard from you since the beginning of the deal. What are you talking about? And then now everybody's pissed, right? So that follow-up is super crucial.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and obviously you don't want to annoy them either. Like if you talk to them and they tell you, oh, we sent out for this document, we expect to get it in 3 days. Well, you don't want to call them the next day and be like, hey, so did you get that document yet? Like, keep in mind there is some variation to this, but if like, let's say you're waiting on the commitment, it should have already been back by now, but it's not there. Well, there's nothing wrong with the next day sending another email or call or do whatever and say, hey, did it come in yet? And it's, it may be a little bit annoying, but in the long run, as long as you're keeping in mind and trying to be mindful of their time and don't do it in a way that's wasting their time, there's nothing wrong with sending consistent follow-ups when it's something that is expected to have been done or come in by this point. It doesn't make sense to do it if there's no expectation. You don't just call them for the sake of calling, but
facts.
Don't let time go by.
I love it.
And then this next step, this is more in reference to with your assignment contract and or just little things to keep in mind when closing. Most of it starts out the same, review the contract, submit CC all parties, including any details. So this part, it's similar, but the difference is, so with this one, with earnest money, this is something I've just found because I also wholesale, not just transaction coordinating. I am always, if my buyer owes earnest money and they're not depositing it, like, this is a huge red flag, because most buyers know they've got to put up earnest money or they're going to lose the deal. And if they're not doing it, that tells me there's something needs to be addressed. So make sure that earnest money and option money is being deposited within the agreed amount of time. Like, if there's some reason why it's going to take them longer, they should have told you. So you need to know what that is. So again, make sure you've got calendar reminders so you don't let these things kind of go, because next thing you know, days can go by and you don't realize that you never checked on it and they never deposited it and they've just wasted 4 days of your contract. So same thing, obtain receipts and copies, keep track of all of that, because again, then you'll use that based off of, if they try to come back and say that they've done certain things by times that they didn't, that protects you. Let's see. Another thing is follow up with title. Like, once you get a buyer, I know that there's sort of like, okay, well, now the buyer is going to work with title company to get their side done. I 100% I'll get as nosy in their side of it as I can, because if I want to know what kind of lender they're using, I want to know as much as the title company will tell me about what's going on. Because if they're telling me that they're paying cash and I submit this deal, this, assignment contract, and that they're telling me they're not using a lender or whatever, and then a few days into it, I'm trying to find out if we're scheduling closing, and then the title company is like, still waiting on lender docs from the buyer. And it's like, well, that doesn't, like, they said they were going to close in 6 days. And we all know that this hard money lender doesn't work faster than 10 days. Like, what's going on here? So I try to, once it's submit, I'll call and I'll talk to the title company. I'll be like, hey, let me know, what's needed. If you need me to contact them, like I'm willing, and that's what all these kind of little side points are like. Be prepared to communicate with your buyers. Like some people don't want to annoy them either, because in your mind, you're like, well, this is the guy buying it. I don't want to irritate him, whatever. But it's like, they have a commitment to come through on their end too. And if they're not coming through, if they're not communicating with the title company, if they're not getting them their LLC docs, if they're not getting them their lender paperwork, all that kind of stuff, that will slow down your deal. So you need to like be on top of it. And again, it's something to keep in mind too, because especially if it's a buyer you've never worked with before, they could just be wasting your time. So just keep in mind that these protect you as well as make your deal close faster. And then what's it? Make sure, these are just like little tips for closing. Make sure your title company has your company info that's up to date, as well as your wiring instructions, because you don't want to get there and then find out they don't have the details to get you your money, and then you're waiting over the weekend to get paid. And then also, what?
No, I was just going to say that if you're watching this live or on the replay, you should be screenshotting this, because these little nuances in your transaction coordination, in structuring out your paperwork and the back-end TC process, make all the difference in making for clean and smooth transactions, y'all. Because some deals, no matter, even if you have all of these items, are going to be rocky, annoying, frustrating, unnecessary, well, seemingly unnecessary delays, and so this is, I'm telling you, y'all, these are the little pebbles in the shoe that keep us, that keep a deal going a couple weeks beyond when we had to.
Exactly. Yep. And then something else that I think gets kind of overlooked a lot, like when I feel like a lot of times when starting out wholesaling, this is in many cases, at least for myself and a lot of people that I know, this is the first time of running your own business. So you don't necessarily know about certain things when it comes to like your taxes and things like that you need to be prepared for. And one of those is like, if you're paying people out for things, you need to make sure that you're getting information, because you need to write that off on your taxes. So if you've got someone who's sending you leads and you're paying them $1,000 for a bird dog fee, if you're the one paying them after the fact, before you do anything, you should collect a W-9 from them. And basically what that is it's their tax information. So whether they're being paid to an LLC or their personal number, you need to get that, because you need to, at the end of the year, if you're paying them more than $600, then you need to be able to file this, because that's a deduction from your taxable income. And so that's what it's important. So the W-9, if that's information you can then give to your accountant at the end of the year, and they can take that off of your total income, because otherwise it's basically like you're paying them under the table and you're paying taxes for them.
Yeah.
So that's important to do. You want to have that prepared and get that ready.
Nuggets.
And then, and these were just kind of like other additional tips that I felt like were popping up that didn't really fit within the step-by-step. So like just tips just to make things kind of more helpful or, smoother process is just make sure you're maintaining regular communication with the sellers. Kind of like we were saying earlier, like if you get the contract and then don't talk to the seller again until it's like, hey, sorry, I know we said we were closing on the 30th, but it looks like it's going to be the 15th of next month. Like that doesn't look good and that doesn't go well. But if you're talking to them, even if you don't need anything from them, like let's say title's clear and you don't need anything from them, even if it's just checking in once a week, every few days to let them know like, hey, we've gotten our maintenance team out there. We've done this. We're getting our bids. Like just wanted to check in and let you know we're hoping to have all of our bids in by the end of the week, whatever it is, just so that they know that this is an active process and that you're not just wasting their time and then popping up 3 weeks later asking them to extend the contract.
Yeah.
And then, I've had deals before where I've talked to people where we contract the deal and then find out that they're already under contract with somebody else because it pops up at title that there's a memorandum, and we ask them about it and they're like, oh yeah, well, we contracted it, but that was like 2 weeks ago and I haven't heard from them. So I figured it was dead. And it's like, you still had a contract. This was a 45-day contract you signed. I get why they think that, but so keep in mind, if it's like an out of sight, out of mind, they may think that you're done and moved on and they may go sign with someone else. And if you don't file a memorandum, which I'm not recommending, but if you don't file something, they could easily just go close behind your back and you wouldn't even know it.
Yeah. 100%.
And let's be real, we're not going to legally go after that. That's just not worth it.
Yeah. Yep.
So communicate regularly, set proper expectations, let them know that like, hey, I'm opening title, and then I'm going to work with them to make sure we get things together, anything needed. Like, let's say, they inherited the property, let them know, okay, as this goes on, I'm going to work with the title company, whatever documents or things are needed, I'll be giving you a call probably next week once we have more details on that. Like, let them know that you're going to be walking them through it. So that they see that, for one, you want them, that's another level of value that they see by working with you.
Yes.
Because it's most of the time it's stuff that they don't understand either.
Yep.
And so if they feel like you're going to walk them through it, they'll feel better about it.
That's right. That's right.
Same with before, is just be mindful of your escrow agent's time. You want to feel like you can request things that you needed. Sometimes you can be a little demanding with our deals. But if you're asking them when they have time to do it, don't waste their time with stuff that's not necessary. Like, try to keep that in mind. They won't avoid your calls, because that's what you don't want. You don't want them sending you a voicemail every time you call.
Yeah.
And same thing with set expectations with your buyers. Don't let them think that you're just going to sign the assignment contract and move on. Let them know, say, okay, cool. When can I expect earnest money to be deposited?
Yes.
And then once they tell you that date, hold them to it. Check the title company if it's not there. Be like, hey, just checking in. Looks like we haven't, like, communicate with them. Let them know, because there are buyers out there who are going to lock up your deal. Maybe they're trying to turn around and wholesale it too, which I have no problem with. If you have a buyer higher than I do, by all means, we can do a double assignment. I don't care. But if you're going to turn around, you don't have a buyer for it, and you're just wasting my time, and you didn't drop off earnest money, you're gonna just kill a week's worth of my contract time, then that's what I want to know that first.
Yeah. Yep.
And I don't want you to think that you're going to get away with it. So I want to be clear that, like, I'm going to be communicating with you, and I am going to be following up on the expectations.
Yeah.
And then, and that goes along with this thing too, is this is just a tip in general, is avoid having your assignment contract expire at the same time as your original. Because if you do have a buyer who's wasting your time, you want to make sure that they're not going to waste your time all the way up until the end of your contract.
Yes.
So it's like, hey, if somebody wastes my time, I'm still going to try to give myself at least a week to turn around and go find another buyer and be able to get this closed.
These nuggets that you are dropping right now, Annalise, unless you've done deal after deal after deal after deal, you do not know about these little nuances, guys. I'm telling you, this is so valuable. This is so valuable. Like this thought here about avoid having your assignment contract expire at the same date as the original. Like, I'm telling you, like, that is spoken from experience.
Like, it hurts because it's a hard experience. It's a hard lesson to learn. Losing deals that way, for sure. But
100%, 100%. I love this idea. Set proper expectations for what's needed when clearing title. I love this. Like, if you already know that this is going to be a probate affidavit situation, then let your seller know that we are going to be working with you along the process. That way, they don't feel ambushed whenever you're calling them to get a bunch of information from title in order to clear title so you can close. Right? The expectations rules a nation. So anyway, I could talk on a lot of these points forever, Annalise. You've dropped some major gems here. How can people get in contact with you if they want to reach out to you to learn more? Because you are doing some pretty dope things in the industry right now.
Thank you. Yeah. So right now I am looking to take on some more clients, because what I'm doing is a transaction coordination business where I actually manage this back end side of things for you. I'm just trying to take on a few people right now, because obviously I don't want to go too far. I don't want too many more people, but honestly, just in general, feel free to book a call. You can scan that there. It'll set up like a 30-minute call. It may not be something that's a fit for us to necessarily work together on, but in the very least, I'm happy to look at your setup, see if there's some adjustments you can make to make your process a little bit smoother, and then discuss options and see if there's something way we can work together to make it work.
Yes, absolutely. And in case those of you who are watching on the replay or live right now didn't know, me and Annalise built an entire wholesaling operation, a wholesaling machine together. And she is one of the illest transaction coordinators of all time. I'm not saying that out of any bias. I have I'm only saying that. I've been saying that since Annalise and I were working together, even till now. And she's so knowledgeable. She understands the game. She understands human nature. Even just like a week ago, I didn't know what to do on a particular deal because it was a very unique set of circumstances I had never been dealt with. And I call Annalise and I'm like, what would you do in this situation? And she gives us the next steps in order for us to be able to solve it. And now we've overcome that challenge. And so just having somebody like Annalise in your corner, I'd strongly recommend save her contact information, connect with her. And in a worst case scenario, even if it's not a good fit for those of you visionaries, you hungry salespeople, to have her or outsource your transaction coordination right now, at the very least, get a consultation call because she can point you in the right direction to where you can get to a place where you need to outsource transaction coordination as fast as possible. Because if you are doing your own transaction coordination right now, number one, I don't envy you, right? Because that is so much work. And most of us who are entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs, we're visionaries, we're salespeople. We want to be hunting. We want to be aggressively looking for deals. And some of you already know what I'm talking about whenever I say, what you don't want to do is have to interrupt your day in the middle of a Tuesday at 2 p.m. when you're supposed to be looking for deals because you have to talk to sellers about the transaction coordination and about how to fill out the affidavit of heirship, because you have to go into a completely different mode. I'm telling you guys, the reason why I was able to focus on the things I was able to focus on whenever I built my wholesaling company is because a large part of it, and those of you who know that Annalise was blocking and tackling for me, handling all of the systems and the transaction coordination and the admin and all of these items so that I could focus on leading the sales staff. And that's how you're able to really grow something substantial that makes sense. So I love what Anthony Hernandez says. He's like, big vibes. She's a superstar. Yes, indeed. Anthony Hernandez has done plenty of deals with Annalise, with myself, with both of us. And so if anybody knows, he knows. She's a real one. She's a real one. But Annalise, what final words do you have to share with the newbie and intermediate entrepreneurs who are watching this on live and on the replay?
I would say for new people, when it comes to, or at least transaction side, is try not to be overwhelmed by it, but just take into account that it's a learning process, but be open to learning it. Because I can tell you, I've met people who've been in this for years who still don't know anything about it because I think they feel overwhelmed by it. And so they just choose to push it off. But I cannot tell you how much money that can cost you if you choose not to learn it. So make an effort to learn it. And then same thing with all of it in general, I would say overall to entrepreneurs in general is, and this is what I was saying last time too. I think this is something that I've heard recently, and it's so true, is if you have the desire to do this and it's more appealing to you to work for yourself, to go through all the struggle and the headache and the effort and the ups and downs, don't give up on it, because not everybody feels that way. And if you feel that way, you're meant to do this, so you should stick with it. Obviously be smart with it. Don't get yourself in a bad situation, but hang in there and wait, stick with it, because you're probably meant to be doing this.
Man, heavy words from Miss Maddox herself. I love it. Well, Annalise, thank you for coming on today's show, for dropping so many nuggets. I hope you entrepreneurs, wholesalers, investors, realtors, and hybrids, and everyone in between, I hope y'all took notes on this live, because I didn't hype this one up for nothing. This right here, I love lives like this because it allows us to nerd out and really get into the nitty gritty. Annalise, you obviously are a professional at this. You obviously have a lot of experience. So guys, I would recommend reaching out to Annalise, connecting with her, getting some nuggets from her. I'm telling y'all, I got around people like Annalise early on in the game. In fact, Annalise, remember what we used to do whenever we found ourselves in a rut in TC where we really wanted to build ourselves up? Remember, we would buy our escrow officers lunch and have them walk us through a title commitment. And we did stuff like that frequently, right?
Yeah, and that's the benefit of building those relationships with them, is they're willing to give you the time too if they see the value in building the relationship with you.
Yeah, 100%. So don't be afraid to reach out, get around people who have experience, and by proximity, you're going to pick up nuggets from them. And sometimes it'll feel like you're overwhelmed, y'all. I know some might be listening to this and they're like, wholesaling is so exciting to me, but I just watched that whole TC episode and my brain is oozing. She was using words that I don't even know how to enunciate properly. And look, what I'll encourage you is continue to expose yourself to these aspects of the business that you're not well acquainted with or are not good at, because what's going to end up happening is you will end up making connections when you go through and hear these things over and over again. And you'll be like, oh, that's what she meant when she said affidavit. Oh, that's what she meant when she said not to allow your assignment contract to be on the same timeline as the original contract. Oh, that's what she, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Continue to expose yourself. Continue to get around people like this, y'all. And again, Annalise, thanks for coming on and blessing us. Until next time, guys, make sure to drive home safely if you're not home yet. When you are home, please love on your loved ones because tomorrow's not promised. Definitely brush your teeth. And for goodness sakes, don't slap nobody. Until next time, let's get it. Deuces.
Thanks.
We made it, that's facts, ayy. We the greatest, that's facts, ayy. Cause it's raising, that's facts, ayy. That's right. But we paid it, that's facts, ayy. They hate it, that's facts, ayy. Cause we changing, that's facts, ayy. We did. Can't blame them, that's facts, ayy. Cause we made it, that's facts, ayy. Cherry on top, that's a goat, yeah. Where you been, I wanna know, yeah. Greatest story ever told, yeah. Greatest story ever told, yeah. I know you wanna look up for this. Baby, let me turn you up a bit. You said you made it through hell and back. Give me the scoop, baby.